There's a moment that confuses people more than failure. It's not when things fall apart. It's not when progress is slow. It's not when life feels heavy. It's the moment after something works, after a breakthrough, after momentum builds, after you finally see evidence that things are changing. That's when the self-sabotage appears. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. You miss an opportunity you would have taken before. You delay something important. You second-guess a decision that felt clear yesterday. You drift back toward old habits that no longer fit who you're becoming. And you don't understand why. You think, why would I pull back now? Why does this feel harder after progress? Why am I undoing something I wanted so badly? So you assume something is wrong with you, that you're afraid of success, that you don't really want change, that you're broken in some way. But self-sabotage after a breakthrough is not a lack of desire. It's a loss of familiarity, because breakthroughs don't just change results. They change identity. They change expectations. They change how others see you. They change what's required of you next. And for your nervous system, that sudden shift matters. Breakthroughs remove the old explanations. You can't say, I'm still figuring it out. I'm not there yet. This hasn't worked for me before. Those stories disappear, and when they do, the system asks a quiet question. Who am I now that this worked? If there's no clear answer, instability appears, not as fear, but as hesitation, not as panic, but as distraction, not as resistance, but as small decisions that slowly pull you back toward the familiar. This is why sabotage often comes after success, because success threatens the identity that knew how to survive before. And until the system learns how to exist after the breakthrough, it tries to restore what it understands. Not because the old life was better, but because it was known. And until you see this clearly, you'll keep blaming yourself for something that's actually a normal response to rapid change. When progress feels destabilizing instead of empowering, it's not a sign you've gone backward. It's a sign your system hasn't learned how to live at this new level yet. To understand why people self-sabotage after breakthroughs, you have to understand what a breakthrough actually does. A breakthrough doesn't just move you forward. It removes the identity buffer you were living inside. Before the breakthrough, there was a story that protected you. I'm still working on it. I'm not there yet. This hasn't happened for me before. Those stories weren't excuses. They were stabilizers. They told your nervous system, this makes sense. This is familiar. This is manageable. But when a breakthrough happens, those stabilizers disappear. Suddenly the story changes. You're capable now. You're visible now. You're expected to maintain something you once hoped for. And that shift happens fast. Too fast for the nervous system to update automatically. So while the mind celebrates, the body starts scanning. It asks, what's required of me now? What happens if I lose this? What if I can't sustain it? And because the system hasn't rehearsed this version of life yet, uncertainty appears. That uncertainty doesn't show up as fear of success. It shows up as loss of grounding. You feel slightly off, slightly distracted, less certain than you expected to feel. So the system does what it always does when familiarity disappears. It tries to recreate it, not by undoing everything at once, but by nudging you back in small ways. You hesitate, you delay, you soften your effort, you return to behaviors that feel emotionally known. This is the origin of post-breakthrough sabotage. It's not self-hatred, it's not unworthiness, it's an attempt to regain internal stability when external reality changes too quickly. And here's the part most people never realize. The bigger the breakthrough, the stronger the pull backward can feel, because the identity gap is larger. The old version of you knew how to survive without this level of responsibility. The new version hasn't learned how yet. So the system pauses you, not permanently, but long enough to decide whether this new level is safe to inhabit. This is why awareness alone doesn't stop sabotage. You can know exactly what's happening and still feel the pull, because sabotage isn't a thought. It's a regulation response. And until the system learns how to remain steady after progress, it will keep reaching for what it knows. When you understand that sabotage follows instability, not failure, you stop fighting yourself and start working with what's actually happening. When a breakthrough happens, most people expect confidence to rise. They expect relief, stability, a sense of arrival. But what often happens instead is something much quieter and more disorienting, an identity shock. Because breakthroughs don't just change what you have, they change who you're expected to be. And that expectation arises before your system has learned how to hold it. You're suddenly seen differently. You're treated differently. You're required to move differently. And internally, your nervous system hasn't caught up yet. So it does what it always does when identity shifts too quickly. It looks for ground. And if the new ground feels unfamiliar, it reaches backward. Not dramatically, not consciously, in small, seemingly harmless ways. You procrastinate on something that matters. You overcomplicate decisions that were simple before. You downplay your progress. You disconnect just enough to soften the feeling of exposure. This is identity shock in action, not fear of success, fear of instability. Because success removes the emotional buffers that once protected you. You can no longer hide behind effort without results. You can no longer say you're almost there. You can no longer delay responsibility. And that level of visibility can feel destabilizing before it feels empowering. This is why resistance often increases after a win. Your system isn't rejecting the breakthrough. It's asking, how do I live here now? And if there's no answer yet, it creates distance. Distance through distraction. Distance through delay. Distance through old behaviors that restore familiarity. The mistake most people make here is trying to eliminate this response. They shame themselves. They push harder. They demand consistency immediately. And in doing so, they increase pressure, which makes the system tighten further. Identity shock isn't resolved through force. It's resolved through orientation, helping your system learn. This is where we are now, and we can stay here safely. Until that orientation happens, the pull backward will continue, not because you're regressing, but because your system hasn't finished mapping this new territory yet. When you stop treating post-breakthrough resistance as failure and start recognizing it as identity shock, the cycle begins to loosen. Here's where most people unintentionally make sabotage stronger. They try to push through it. They tell themselves, I can't afford to slip now. I need to stay disciplined. I can't let this fall apart. So they apply pressure, more structure, more urgency, more self-monitoring. And while that may create short-term compliance, it reinforces the very response they're trying to stop. Because pressure tells the nervous system something specific. This isn't safe yet. Instead of calming the system, pressure confirms its fear. It says, if I don't stay alert, something will go wrong. If I relax, I'll lose this. If I slow down, I'll fall back. So the system tightens further, and sabotage becomes more subtle, more persistent, more confusing. This is why people feel like they're fighting themselves after breakthroughs. One part of them wants to move forward. Another part wants to slow everything down. And the harder they push, the stronger the internal resistance becomes. Because sabotage isn't caused by a lack of willpower. It's caused by a lack of internal permission to inhabit success without tension. When success feels like something you must protect, your system never fully enters it. You're always hovering, always watching, always guarding, and that hovering creates instability. The nervous system learns expansion requires constant vigilance, and since vigilance is exhausting, the system looks for relief, often by pulling you back toward what feels easier. The paradox is this: the more you try to force stability, the less stable things become. Stability isn't created through control. It's created through familiarity, through repeated experiences of success that are not followed by pressure. This is why integration matters more than intensity. You don't need to prove you deserve the breakthrough. You need to teach your system that living here doesn't require self-override. Until that lesson lands, any attempt to lock in success will quietly push it away. When pressure becomes the response to progress, the system never learns that success can be lived in safely. When you stop treating sabotage as something to eliminate and start seeing it as a signal to integrate, everything changes. You no longer panic when resistance appears. You don't interpret hesitation as failure. You don't assume you're about to lose what you've gained. Instead, you slow the internal response, not the progress. You allow your system time to orient to this new level. You continue moving forward, but without urgency, without self-surveillance, without pressure to prove anything. This is how breakthroughs become stable, not by locking them in through control, but by letting your system learn that success doesn't require hypervigilance. You show it again and again that nothing bad happens when you remain calm inside progress, that you don't abandon yourself when things work, that growth doesn't demand sacrifice of safety. And gradually, the old pull loses its strength, not because it was defeated, but because it's no longer needed. The identity that once survived without success is replaced by one that knows how to live with it. This is the difference between momentary change and lasting transformation. Momentary change happens fast. Lasting change settles. It becomes familiar, normal, unremarkable in the best way. And once success becomes familiar, self-sabotage has nothing to attach to, because there's no instability to correct. There's no identity gap to close. There's just a life you know how to live inside without pulling yourself out of it. That's when progress stops feeling fragile and starts feeling like home.